Hi, welcome back to the Corrective Culture podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Matt Maruca, who owns Ra Optics and is I would say, a very spiritual man for how young he is, and doing a lot of good out there in the world. And yeah, you're an inspiration, bro. So we had to get you on the potty.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be on.
Yeah, man. I feel like you were the first blue light blocking glasses I ever heard about. They were the first pair I owned, actually.
Yeah, me too.
And we,
great.
we got them whenever.
Let's go.
That was years ago now. And actually, the dog got them a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
But I'll get another.
Yeah.
But
All right. Yeah, well, I'll have to fix that.
yeah, for sure. So, what's your story behind? Like, what made you go towards that sort of part of the health industry?
Yeah. Well, I was struggling with different challenges as a kid. So gut issues, headaches, allergies, primarily, and accepted they were genetic. Didn't think I could do anything about them. It was just, I was like 8 years old. At one point, my mom took me to a naturopath doctor and did kind of a special yeast cleanse diet. And I don't remember really feeling any different, but at least it was kind of a step towards something more natural. My mom was at least all about organic foods, but she didn't control what I was eating when I was out with my buddies and stuff. So then I learned about paleo diet when I was in high school, just my first year of high school, because I was getting all these breakouts on my skin of acne, as many teenagers do, but I was really self-conscious about it. But the thing that struck me was when I was reading about the paleo diet or the primal diet with Mark Sisson and Rob Wolf, Chris Kresser, all those guys. One of the things I read on Mark Sisson's blog was basically, hey, have you guys heard of this concept of epigenetics? It's this idea that basically, you can change the way your genes are expressed through other factors outside of you, it's not like you're born with these genes and that's all you're going to have your whole life. And then you're stuck like that. And I thought that was really fascinating because it was the first thing I pretty much ever read in my not adult life, but, being not just a kid, kind of getting into young adult and thinking for myself a little more. And I thought this makes sense. And, it meant to me that I could probably heal some of these health issues. And now I believe that was the premise, or that was, I guess, one of the premises. And then his conclusion was that, okay, then it's all about diet. 80% of your health is diet. And so I accepted that without really analyzing it because I was totally sold on the other stuff, especially the idea of epigenetics. And he seemed like he knew what he was talking about. Good looking dude, all ripped up and, living a healthy lifestyle. And so then I became obsessive about all these diets. I got completely obsessed because I thought, well, I did it. I actually felt better. Of course, when you cut out all the junk food, you're going to feel better. And I thought, well, the little bit of symptoms, let's say I was 75% better with all the different things I was experiencing. I thought, well, that little bit extra, I must be able to fix it with food because, it's all about food. That was the idea. And so I started doing these strict elimination diets like the paleo autoimmune diet, then the GAPS diet, and then kind of variations of the carnivore diet. And I actually just felt worse. I felt really drained, really tired, really restricted. And then I would go and I was 16 at this point. So it had kind of been 2 years, 15, 16. And I would go into these really challenging cycles for me of strict elimination diet and binge eating. Cause I was I'd have one thing as a teenager, I'd be with my buddies and I'd have one thing that I was trying to restrict myself. Don't have this, don't have that. These diets are extremely strict if you've ever looked into them. And the idea is if you eat the wrong thing, then you kind of have to start all over from scratch because you kind of basically threw off the whole system, all the repair that was going to be happening. And the whole idea is you give your gut a break from all these inflammatory foods so it can heal. So the point is it got pretty difficult for me mentally. And obviously the model was incomplete. I just didn't know that. So I was obsessed with a broken model and trying to fine tune a model with a broken foundation. Anyway, then I learned about a guy named Dr. Jack Kruse, who's a blogger. Maybe you've heard of him, but he's a neurosurgeon. And he was pretty much the first guy really talking about light, mitochondria, circadian rhythms. And that struck me because when he said something like, hey, have you tried practically every diet and you're still struggling with food? I thought yeah, that seems like me. What do I not know? And so I started studying these things and it kind of blew my mind. Years later, I learned that there's a lot more. I learned that if you just focus on the external light, as I call it, like the circadian rhythms and, no blue light, more sunlight, I thought that I would actually optimize my dopamine in my brain and all these hormones and neurotransmitters just through getting all this stuff right. And then I would actually be happy because of this, so that you could like biohack your way to happiness. But I actually felt miserable. Like physically, I had healed a lot more using all this light information, but I still felt like empty inside at a certain point, even having my company, even traveling the world a couple years into that. And so then I was like, okay, well, I'm still missing something. It's not just about food, although it plays a role. It's not just about like light, sunlight, all this stuff. There must be something missing. And that's how I got into now much more of an interest in like what I call inner light, focusing on the spiritual stuff. But anyway, that's how I got into thinking optics and the company at that point, studying how light affects our health. And I still think it's really significant. That's why I'm doing it every day. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, man, that's
really cool, bro. And you're I know you've spent some time with Paul Chek recently.
Oh yeah. He's the best.
How good is he? I listened to your podcast with him, like it was a couple of years ago now. Hey, but yeah. That was cool. How was that experience out at his ranch? How good is it out there?
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I don't know if it can get any better, honestly. Like, I definitely, whenever I'm so fortunate to spend time with like Paul Chek, Ben Greenfield, some of these people in the space, just doing what I'm doing. We connected. Actually, Ben connected me with Paul. That was really cool. I was in San Diego. He's like, "Have you met Paul Chek?" I'm like, "No." And then he like 2 minutes later, like texted. I was like, dude, thanks. This is great. So Paul and I ended up doing a podcast, and I got to obviously go out to his place. He had just moved into his newer place. Now this is a couple years ago, like 3 years ago, but it's beautiful. It's, they have tons of agriculture they're working on, like all kinds of fruit trees and stuff. They're, as far as I know, fully self-sufficient using solar and this kind of thing. They have a well, if I'm not mistaken. They just have a lot of really good stuff going on there. And the point is, whenever I leave there or visit Paul or visit somebody like Ben and see how they have things like dialed in and they're just like focused, they're on their purpose, they're on their mission, they get up early every day and they grind and they get so much stuff done. It really inspires me. Like, how could I level up? Like, how could I be more like that? Just there's not really any question of like what needs to get done during the day, if you will. It's just like wake up. Like I'm on a mission, and I love that energy. Now I'm not in that place right now in my life. I'm like much more interested in traveling and exploring while building my company. Like people say, oh, but if you just locked down in one place and just, focused everything on this or that, on your company, like you could probably grow it to like, bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's funny, there's this story, maybe you've heard a bit about like the fishermen in Cuba or somewhere where the business guy comes down. He's like, well, you could, if you fished more, you could hire somebody and have another boat and then you could do this. And he's like, well, why? And he goes through the whole thing. Well, why this? Why that? He's like, well, then you could have a factory and And he's like, well, why would I do that? And he's like, well, then you could sit down and hang out with your buddies and play cards and do whatever you want. He's like, but that's what I do every night already.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's an interesting story. Somebody told me one time, but I was just thinking about it last night. I had this feeling. I'm like, usually I go to sleep pretty early, but I had this feeling like I want to just go walk into this little town where I'm staying. You can see it behind me. This is not a fake background. Yeah. But, it's nice. Kind of cool. I'm on like this bay. But anyway, I'm in Albania, so Eastern Europe. I'll tell you more about that after. Yeah. But basically, I had this feeling I wanted to go sit at a cafe by myself, like late, which I usually don't do. I mean, for me, late is like 8 p.m. That's late for me.
Yeah.
So daylight savings just happened. So it's like 8. What's 8 now used to be 9. So I'm thinking about all this stuff. But anyway, I sat down and was just kind of journaling and thinking. I was like, I'm living my dream. Like I'm literally traveling my business, doing what I want. How am I going to let anybody, especially people who aren't living their dream? Yeah. Not that they're wrong with that, but how am I going to let them tell me what they think I should do? Like, no. So it's just a matter of like optimizing, I have every desire to grow my company and bring it to its fullest potential, but I'm just like considering the amount of inspiration and energy I feel like I get by being able to go to cool places and meet new people, see new cultures, see different history, ruins that get me thinking about like a lot of perspective on life. If you go see ruins from 4,000 years ago, you're like, wow, those people were here and then they died. Yeah, that's it. So like, I'm going to be here and then I'm going to die. So why don't I just do something like try to make my life cool and exciting? Paul Chek, awesome guy. Like, I'm sure you guys would, love to meet him if you're ever over in San Diego.
Yeah, I was just
I'm
there.
sure he'd love to meet you as well.
Yeah. I just went to his house in San Diego for like 10 days. I did a check, his check course, which was sick. But I totally get what you mean about
cool.
Like I did a podcast with him actually as well, which was sick. But it's amazing.
I gotta hear that. Nice.
Yeah, you know that feeling. It's so crazy. Like before, I was a little bit kind of lost. I was dipping into study and making sure I had everything ready for the course. But once I was there and I saw the way he was working, he was on purpose. I was like, oh fuck, it all makes like a lot of sense now. I was just like, he's just fully living what he preaches. You know what I mean? And it's so sick to have elders like that we can look up to and just be like, okay, well that's where we're headed. You know what I mean? And I do see that in you, like with your company. Like, how old are you now?
24.
Yeah, dude, you're the prime of your life. Like that's what you're meant to do in your 20s, right? Like I'm only 34, but
I agree.
My 20s, I traveled the whole time as well, and it's like the education you get from that, and the like you said, the in touch to like the depthness of the world is like so important. So
I agree. I mean, I literally couldn't agree more.
Yeah,
it struck me so much last night. Really, it struck me, and I thought right back to that story of the Cuban fisherman who had that conversation with the businessman trying to convince him to scale his whole operation. Again, I'm going to scale my company. In fact, we already are scaling, and it's really exciting. We're working on new products, but I guess the question really comes down to, do you believe that you can have it all? Like, some people, they're in the mindset of this or that. Like, there's no way that you could travel, live, the life, live the dream, be in different places every week or every month, and scale your business to its fullest potential. People are always going to say, yeah, but you're making a sacrifice. But I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if that's true. Like if I get up every day and I work as much as I would work when I'm in one place. See, the thing for me, it's funny, is when I'm in one place for a while, like I was in San Diego. I mean, for me, a month is a while, a month or two. But I was in San Diego, my mom lives out there, so I was visiting her, and just rented a place, hanging out. And somehow I end up like working the whole day, like from like the moment I'm done my meditation, I work the whole day. I go maybe surf for an hour or two or train, but if the waves aren't good, I can't be in the water as long. So it's like, I just fill all my time with work. And now, to be fair, I don't have probably enough of social, dealings going on because I'm just doing my own thing, which I kind of prefer anyway right now. But all that to say, like, other people will fill their time with seeing friends, which, again, unless it's like really high level people, I don't personally really enjoy just like shooting the shit with people. It's just like not my preferred thing. And I think that's led to me having kind of success, if you will, of what I'm doing right now, being focused in a different direction. But anyway, so I would just spend all this time working. And I try to think, what else could I do? I could read more, but like, I'd rather work on the business than read more information. Like I've learned enough information. I feel like I have a good idea. Let me practice it more. Like, let me meditate more. Let me train more. Let me work on the right things more. But it's still like, I used to think I didn't have enough time. I realized the problem is the opposite. Ironically, I have way more than enough time. And so my brain would, like, out of almost like a fear of being bored. In fact, that's definitely what it is. Like a fear of just not knowing what to do with myself just creates all this, like, I have to do this and I have to do that and I have to do this. And so then it's like, for me, traveling is actually a way that I can fill time in like a healthy way. Like I'm out walking. Any new city I go to, I train in a different way. Like I usually run up the castles at the tops of hills and do body weight at the top. Like for me, how cool is that? Like, I'm probably going to go to Yeah, I know it's cool, but like I'm probably going to go. It's kind of crazy. Let me just show you guys the camera. So I'm going to turn this around. So I'm in a place called Saranda, Albania.
Wow.
Yeah, this is Albania. This is a coastal town called Saranda in Albania. And then that's the Greek island of Corfu right there. If you can see across the water, it's 20 kilometers. And that's actually northern Greece, northwestern Greece. And I'm probably there's a speedboat 30 minutes. I'm probably going to go over there for the weekend and do whatever, walk around, sit at a cafe and work. There's because Corfu is extremely touristy. Like Albania is like a farm country compared to, like it's like New York City over there. I went over for a day already. It's crazy, but there's all these cafes and it's like, for me, it's exciting. So I just think one more thing on that note is yesterday. So we're working on red light therapy panels. You probably heard of this concept. So anyway, so we're working on the best because that's what we do. So we're going to make them way better. And the manufacturer was telling me like, I was like, I want to have our logo in a shiny gold somehow. Like, embossed. I don't know, like on the Apple laptops, the Apple is like a different material than the metal, and it's like in there and it's shiny, it's glass or something, or metal, shiny metal, whatever.
Yeah.
But I was like, I want to have this on our panels, and if Apple can do it, we should be able to do it too. Like this can't be, it might cost a little more, but it can't be like technically impossible. But I think a lot of people, including myself for a while of my life, just think like, no, that just can't be done. And then the manufacturer emails us like, actually, we searched and we found a supplier who can do this and we'll keep you posted.
Sick.
And I just screenshot and sent it to my team. I said like, never let them tell you that you can't go for gold, because we're actually going for gold in this case.
Sick.
Or like at least gold replica. And I said, like, I just felt like in the moment, this is true. I'm like, usually they're just trying to talk you out of your dreams, and they're never right either, So like, I'm just joking, of course, in that case about the manufacturer saying it can't be done, but just in general in life, like people are going to say, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't do that, because they think they can't do that. So then you can't do it either. And then it's like, they're definitely not right ever. But also, they're not necessarily trying to help you either. So,
man,
anyway,
it feels like
mornings ramblings from.
Dude, I love it.
Yeah.
It feels like really similar to us, because how long now has it been? 3 years.
About 3 years.
We started this business
sort of
3 years ago. Eh?
Yeah, and similar, like life sort of changed. Like we went to Queenstown and snowboarded, and the business paid for the whole thing, and we took a videographer over and stuff, and we're sitting there thinking, like, man, we're in Queenstown right now. Me snowboarding for the first time. Jake goes all the time, but I was like, I couldn't believe it that the business had paid for it, and it was just felt like true freedom. It felt like true freedom. I was like, well, this is what life can be and is now, and it's just, and here pretty well everything you said was like similar to our story on the other side of the world.
Yeah, for sure. We're a little bit behind you, but we're on our way.
Oh no, come on! No, don't say that. That's not true either. All in the right place.
Yeah, I agree. And dude, it's amazing. It's so empowering, and that's why we I really wanted to connect with you and people like yourself that are doing and living this stuff. And I can really feel like lately too, I've been seeing that you're starting to get this real deep connection with like God or whatever that is to you. But it's been cool to watch, man. Like I can see you're delving deep at the moment, eh?
Thanks, bro. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I just didn't post on social media for a while, and just for a number of reasons. But my friend, this guy Solbra, I told you about, he's a really good friend of mine and really cool, and he's I'd say inspirational. Like, so I mentioned, there's not a ton of people who I hang around who have this higher vibe, who are getting out and getting after it. But like, I'm sure, you guys are some of them who are. And anyway, spending time with him for me is very, very rewarding and very inspiring, because he's like totally ripped, working out, overcoming himself, building his brand, doing all the right things, or most of the right things at least. And and then I think it kind of goes another way, because he sees how I'm doing things with the business, and he has his own companies as well. But it's just a really great friendship. And one of the things he was telling me is like, dude, you got to post more. Like, it's your biggest sales channel. You're leaving a lot, you're just leaving a lot on the table in a sense. And I was just thinking about it, like, in a way, I know he's right deep down, that I ought to be doing more of the social media, because all the people who are really impacting the world generally are using social media, because it's just a way to reach more people as yourself. And I was telling myself like, yeah, but I'm going to focus on this. I'm going to focus on that. I'm going to focus on that. And at some point, you have this feeling of like, I have to do that. I'm just ignoring it. And for me, it's like, if it's not part of my daily routine, then it's just never going to happen. So effectively, so if I just start, I'm just like, let me just start. So I really just started posting. And one of the things too that was a little bit of like a touchy subject that I was kind of afraid of even touching was the concept of like what food to eat, because people, it's like the light diet's not really about what food you eat. I made a post yesterday talking about how really what the light diet about, what I've come to see it's about. When I started, I thought it was all just, as I mentioned, about like optimizing your circadian rhythm and exposing yourself to more sunlight to make more dopamine and serotonin in your brain and all the endorphins that make you feel good, and optimize your cellular chemistry, all this stuff, optimize your sleep. And the idea was that for me, like if I did enough of this, like my cells would just be charged up with energy so much that I would just feel great all the time, right? Like enough ice baths, enough sunbathing, enough exercise, etc., the right food. But again, I got to a point where I felt like pretty empty. I was actually on the Mediterranean Sea. I was in Croatia, like this was in 2019 in the summer. So 4 years ago now. And I was just like, I do not feel the way I want to feel. Like I'm feeling kind of like lost and lonely, and I don't think just because you're by yourself doing things, you have to be lonely. Like I'm alone at the moment traveling, but I don't feel lonely at all. So I think it's more about like, your energy, but all that's to say, that's how I felt. And then I had this great thought, like probably one of the best thoughts I've ever had, which was like, if I understood everything about life, like I thought I did, because I, kind of had this know-it-all mindset, then I should be able to feel happy. Like if my model was complete, then I should be able to have happiness, but my model must be complete. There must be something I'm missing. And so I actually had to kind of mentally go back to the drawing board. And that's when I started to look into the work of, Dr. Joe Dispenza. And I started to put more of a focus on meditation and so on. And anyway, so going back to the post that I made, it's basically this idea of the light diet as it's evolved for me is that for me, what I want in my life, given what my experience has showed me, is that like just health isn't the be all end all. Like a lot of people in the biohacker world, like I just want to have health. One of the things I realized in my journey, going through this health stuff was looking back, like, so, in retrospect, they say hindsight's 20/20, but looking back on everything, I had this thought, like, when I was like in this mindset that I'm sick and I have these health issues, I don't remember even one single time that I went and wrote down or even thought, like, if I were fully healthy, this is what I would be doing. Like, I'd be snowboarding with my buddies. I'd be traveling the world. I'd be doing all these different things, scaling my business, focusing on it more because I had more energy, whatever. I didn't even make a reason for myself to be healthy, like to be whole. It was like, and I really believe that most or many people, at least in this health and wellness world, it's actually the sickness world, ironically, but that's kind of how things are in the world today. Like the healthy people are the people who are out, in my opinion, hiking on a Saturday or biking, like those people are like embodying health, and they can eat whatever the hell they want and it doesn't wreck their gut. The people who are like mentally sick, like have mental, like, I'm not saying mental illness per se, but like have mental psychological issues. And I would say I've fallen into that category very much, whether it's trauma or whatever. These are the people who then can't digest anything from a food perspective. They have all these food sensitivities and everything. And I think it really has to do with not being able to like digest life or process life or avoiding somehow life. But anyway, so for me, from all this experience, like I've come to believe that the highest goal is to lift our consciousness as high as we can. And another way to say that is like all the great spiritual teachers, effectively all of them, the consistent thread, and I've looked at a lot of them now, they basically say that we live in an illusion. So like the truth is that we're all one. Everything is actually oneness. Just like, all the drops of water in the sea make up one sea, and all the, grains of sand on a beach make up what we call a beach. Like, so we could say, yeah, we're like different grains of sand or different drops of water, but like we're all part of the same sea. And the illusion is that we're like separate, so like we get, again, this is just from people far above my pay grade, but basically the idea is that we are actually one and we're separate. And that's hard for people to conceptualize because we are so immersed in the illusion of separation, as Dr. Joe Dispenza calls it. And that it's like impossible to think like, wow, like we're actually all one. But if you get to this place where you're like, yeah, we're all one, then the only logical conclusion from there, as far as I've kind of come to understand, is like, we're all one. We're also all good. Like it's all good. Everything's fine. And again, that might sound hard to say because, there's people getting killed in Israel right now and Ukraine and all this. So it's like many people do not want to accept the idea, like it's all good. It's all okay because, and I understand, like if my family was being murdered or something, like I don't think I'd at this point, at least, be like at a high enough level to be like all good. You know what I mean? That'd be pretty tough. But, that is, as far as again, to the best of my understanding, like that is the mindset. And interestingly enough, if people embody this mindset of like, it's all good, things are all right, we're all one family, let's say, if you will, like we're a human family, we're a cosmic family, then there wouldn't be people going out and murdering each other. Ideally, like this stuff wouldn't be happening. Again, I'm not a political expert and I don't want to get into these touchy subjects, but maybe they would just figure out a way to make it work. Like, listen, we were here, then, we came here and let's just work this out, like there's gotta be like, there's so many instances in life where people find like negotiation, like happy agreement, happy mediums. Like, why is it that politics and like borders of countries are the only thing that are exempt from that? You know what I mean? Like, we found a time to make a podcast work. You're in Australia, I'm here.
Yeah.
I know that sounds like a small example, but like in every area of life ever, people are able to like find a middle ground. But apparently the political world is just one where that's just not allowed to happen, right? And obviously there's all these theories about like the one world government and the people at the top controlling it. But so back to this post once more. I realized like the light diet, because all I want is like happiness and wholeness. That's what I realized from doing Joe Dispenza's work. It's like health is important, but I actually thought that if I had my health, like maximum health, that I would feel wholeness, like love and just oneness and good, and happiness and joy and all the feelings that come from like feeling wholeness. And Joe Dispenza says it's interesting. People start to heal when they start to generate wholeness within them. That's when they start to heal. Or people, oftentimes they start to generate the feelings of abundance and that they're worthy, and then they start to get wealthy. Like a certain part of you had to get to like, I'm worthy of being in Queenstown snowboarding, and my business pays for it, and I'm vlogging the whole thing, and I'm worthy. Because I learned also the other flip side of that is that I had the money to travel and do what I wanted, but I didn't feel worthy and I felt miserable. So it's like, again, like Dr. Joe Dispenza and other spiritual teachers say, it's like the emotion comes first. And the interesting thing is if you can get good at cultivating the emotion, regardless of your environment, which comes from, in my understanding, it comes from realizing that we're all one, because then you can tap into any emotion you want to at any time because you have it all already within you, as they say. Then you don't even need the thing outside of you. Like you literally, so like the irony, again, and many people have this, like I had the thing outside of me, the money, the ability to travel, but I felt miserable. And thankfully I still have that, material freedom, but I wouldn't be surprised if I got so good at just cultivating that wholeness from within me. And I know there are lots of monks who do this and other just happy everyday people who practice this stuff, who are just happy and they don't need to go travel. They don't need to go do all this stuff. For me, it's kind of like, becoming like a game. I know it sounds crazy, but I'm like,
that makes sense.
Do I want to go to, like, literally this morning I woke up and meditated. I'm like, do I want to go to Corfu for the weekend or stay here and travel in Albania? Like, what do I want to do? And I'm like, just treat it like a game, because at this point I know that, and somehow this is the thing that enables me to keep doing this, I think, is that I know that it's not going to make me happy if I go to Greece for a weekend or if I go here, like none of that. It's all external. It's not going to lead to the true happiness. I have to create that within me and then bring it out to where I'm going. And then that's real success. So the light diet isn't about like, eat this, don't eat that. It's about actually, and from the beginning it was about light, but now it's taken on more of like a spiritual purpose of like lifting our consciousness and overcoming, let's say, this illusion consciousness. And ultimately the people who do this the best, like these great spiritual masters, they're considered enlightened because they've overcome this illusion of the ego, which is the thing that keeps us, separate and in survival and in separation and division and hatred. And like, you are there and I'm here and we're not the same and we're not one. So that's what the light diet's about.
Yeah. That's a cool story.
Spot on. Hey, and Arnold Payton, he says, the soul is never satiated by anything other than itself. So that's pretty much what I got from that a lot, is like, there's nothing outside of yourself that will ever give you that feeling of like feeling satiated and wholeness and feeling at home wherever you are in the world. And that's like, I can really empathize with where you're at, because that's like where I've been at in the last few years. It's just like trying to be really like okay with whatever comes and love everyone anyway. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
When you brought meditation into your life, or say when you meditate now, what does it do for you? How do you feel like it changes your actions in your life? Is it just for choices that you're going to create for that day, or do you meditate with intentions, or do you just meditate with just seeing what comes up?
Yeah. I really appreciate you asking. This is something I'm very much working on, but there are a few different techniques from the different teachers I followed that interest me a lot. So my first understanding of meditation was just like the transcendental meditation. So just kind of sitting and just like seeing what comes up. And I didn't really see enough value or meaning in this for me to really practice it like wholeheartedly. So yeah, I mean, that's basically it. So I never really got into that. I was familiar with this kind of idea of meditation, but I never really got into it. Not to say that it's not super beneficial. Tons of people practice TM, like a Buddhist style meditation, and they just observe their thoughts and then let it go, and observe their thoughts and let it go. And it's like practicing non-attachment, as I understand. And there's probably more to it than I'm describing right now, but that's like my superficial understanding of like transcendental meditation and Buddhist kind of basic meditations. Again, there's so many different kinds that there's no way I'm even coming close to touching all of them for anybody who's quick to be like, oh, he said this, chill. Okay. Division and separation. That's not what we're talking about here. So anyway, then what I started learning about was then more Joe Dispenza. And so first I want to disclaim anybody who wants to look into Joe Dispenza, go to his website. I don't claim to represent his teachings, as some kind of representative, just sharing my own experience. But what he taught made the most sense to me. And basically it's that our personality creates our personal reality. So our life, and our personality is made up of how we think, how we act, and how we feel. And so if we want to change our life, our personal reality, we have to change our personality. And that's the only way to change your experience of the world. And this made sense to me very clearly because I had thought in my own thought experiments for years, like the entire experience that I'm technically having of the world is occurring inside my mind, right? We know that. That's basic science. Like the light comes in, the images are being formed in your brain. It could be actually happening outside of us. We have really no way of knowing that. I have no way of knowing that anything outside of my experience is even real. That, I have no way of knowing that you guys are experiencing something similar to what I'm experiencing. We assume that, but it's an assumption, just like pretty much everything. So everything, at least external, right? So this experience I'm having is actually supposedly happening in my brain. Well, then that means that like my brain, especially as a baby born, doesn't have an innate meaning to the things that are happening in its life. It hasn't assigned meaning to all of the different things that it sees and experiences. And so it's kind of just like, whoa, it's just kind of connected to the oneness in a way, actually. And so as we grow, obviously part of like learning how to survive, we have to say like, okay, like there's, not a single thing in sight for me that I can't name. I mean, think about like chair, baby chair, trash can, flowers, rocks in a stone wall with a metal caging, a metal roof, lights, like trees, leaves, shorts, chair, buildings, hill, trees, ridgeline, like boat, buoy, guy with oars on a canoe. Like we have a name for every single thing. Think about it. If you saw something you didn't know what it was, you would figure out what it is really quickly. Like I challenge anybody who's listening is look for something in your day that you don't know the name of, like maybe like a curb. I'm like a curb, you know what a curb is, like maybe some component of a car wheel. I wouldn't know what it's called, but besides that, we've assigned meaning to everything. And so we interpret the point is we interpret everything. It's indiscriminate information, meaning it doesn't have a meaning, or I should say, it doesn't have a meaning assigned to it coming in. We assign meaning to everything in our brain. And that's where our experience of the world is created. It's entirely internal. So like one person could see the ocean and be like, oh my God, I'm going to drown. Like, keep me away. There's going to be a tsunami. Like they've never seen the water before and they don't know what it can do. And it scares them. Another person's like, I'm going to jump in and swim, like I'm stoked. And I really believe, although that's just one analogy, you could think of 100 in the same vein. That explains pretty well like how our internal perception of something is what actually we experience. And it has very little to do with the thing's innate qualities or what it actually is outside of us. So the point is, it made sense for me, having thought about this for years, when I learned, the way Dr. Joe explained it, like, okay, well, yeah, that makes sense. I already knew this, deep down. Like if I'm being the same personality, thinking the same way, acting the same way, feeling the same way, I'm going to create the same life every day. And he talks about the neuroscience of how basically everything in our life is linked to there's a certain basically neural pathway in our brain that is linked to everything, a network, we could call it, that's linked to everything. So again, all the things we perceive, the objects, the people, places, things, certain times, they all have a certain neural network associated with them that we're familiar with. So we react and show up with certain people. And then if we meet new guys, like we're very busy in the process of forming neural networks of like, what do I think about you guys and who are you and what are you like? And you're doing the same thing about me. Maybe you're really good at it. But like we're all doing it. It's totally natural, like to do this process. But again, the point is that's what we fix these patterns, and then people just go in and say, this is my life, and it's fixed. And so what I understood from what Dr. Joe's sharing is that, when we meditate, we're actually taking our attention and energy off of those things. Because if you wake up every day and you're just running right through, the same patterns and the same habits, you're reacting and responding to everything in your life probably the same way, unless, again, some really severe death happens, somebody gets sick or whatever, then somebody has to actually look and say, okay, like I need to change. And they like have some crisis that's like, I have to reevaluate everything right now. But otherwise, many people just run through the same pattern. And so if they're not changing these neural networks, then they're basically living the same life every single day. And Joe says, you could take their yesterday and pick it up and place it on there tomorrow, and you know exactly what's going to happen in their life. And I think that's really interesting and accurate, because I was experiencing the same thing for myself. So anyway, in order to change the brain and the way we're perceiving things, it makes sense that we would have to actually disconnect from these familiar patterns. And so meditation is the way where you actually deprive yourself of the external stimuli, and you actually go inwards and you go into, nothingness, basically, or space is one of the terms he uses in a lot of his meditations that people would kind of complain about. And he uses nothing now much more. But so you basically go into like a space of nothingness, trying to disconnect, because the brain, and this happens when we meditate, and this is where the transcendental meditation thing, might make a lot of sense, is like the brain jumps to this, and then it jumps to that, and then it jumps to that. And in getting good at just not putting all your attention, it's like, oh, where am I going to go this weekend? Or what do I have to do today? And a lot of the time, to be honest, when I meditate, that's all that's happening. Yeah, like I don't go beyond my thinking brain. And maybe because it's early in the morning and I have more clarity and peace, maybe I at the very least, try to make some clear decisions or direction for the day of like, so to your question, like how I'm going to act, like maybe how I'm going to act, or like what things I'm going to do. But from a place of clarity, because a good friend of mine who I'll talk about maybe a little later on, he's a yogi. He studied in India for several years. He was going to be a monk, ended up getting married, but still lives a very monk type lifestyle. He studied the ancient scriptures a lot. He's my doctor, very close friend.
Cool.
And anyway, he told me that the best time, according to the ancient, Ayurvedic and Hindu scriptures of knowledge, is the best time to make any important decisions is always in the morning, because our nervous system is much more fresh and ready. And in the afternoon or in the evening, he says, like for most people, you shouldn't even trust your mind, because it's going to throw all kind of false beliefs and all sorts of false information at you. And I started thinking about this and observing this in my life. Like there were nights where I would lay down and journal and try to figure everything out in my life, like laying down before bed, which is the worst time to try to figure things out, because you're exhausted. So everything's being looked at from like fatigue and lower consciousness. And I actually directed my life based on those decisions for a long time, which made sense. Now I'm directing my life on crucial decisions are always made in the morning. So like even yesterday evening, when I'm trying to think, what do I want to do tomorrow? Where do I want to go? I ultimately know I might throw out a couple ideas, but I'm not going to make a choice until the morning. And the irony, or the interesting thing, is like, I've had so many nights now where like if I'm really stressed about something or something seems like it's going wrong, where I'm laying down in bed and my mind's running and worrying, and I wake up and I've had times where I couldn't even remember what I was worrying about. Like it wasn't even an issue, but the mind just goes wild because the nervous system is fatigued. He said with like 10 years of dedicated, very consistent meditation, you can create more balance in your evening state, but most people just aren't there. So it's better for most people to make decisions. Even having business meetings, it's always better earlier in the day, like breakfast or lunch, not the typical dinner. And our whole society is based on dinner. But anyway, I just want to close the circle of the meditation point. So at the very least, I'll accomplish some kind of directional thinking in the morning. Ideally, I'll actually disconnect from myself and connect, let's say, back to the soul, and just, let's say, feel this wholeness of just being myself. So this is another type of meditation. There's a type of meditation where you can kind of disconnect, but then think, how am I going to act? How am I going to feel? How am I going to do the things today? How am I going to respond? That's like one type of maybe a more active meditation, you could say. Then there's another type of meditation that I've been doing with, Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, of just dissolving into nothingness. So just letting go and seeing just how far I can go. And then if I have any questions or things I want to think about that afterwards, like after I've touched that really elegant point, that really nice moment where I'm like, I feel really good. Like everything's cool. Like where I really got over the illusion of like, I have to do a million things. And And Joe always says, like, I want you to know when you're there and when you're not, and like I get to know, thankfully, when I reach that state. And so anyway, that's another. And then for me, one of the most interesting types of meditations, and I think probably the most valuable for me, at least in the long term. Again, these others are very valuable, but just disconnecting and nothingness, it's cool. But I want to like evolve my consciousness, right? And I think disconnecting from all the chatter is a good step in the right direction. But this is something that I've seen and experienced both through Dr. Joe Dispenza's teachings, but also through the teachings of ancient, I guess, yogic practices called Kriya Yoga. So it's a type of meditation where you basically instead of focusing on nothing, which Joe calls a divergent focus, it's a convergent focus, which means you put your attention actually in a specific place. And in this type of meditation, you're actually taking your energy and attention and you're putting it on your different energy centers, which are also known as chakras. And so people in India, or these yogis, have practiced this for thousands of years, this technique called Kriya Yoga. It's written about a lot in a book by Paramahansa Yogananda called The Autobiography of a Yogi, which is like a kind of world famous
my dad
book.
Bought me that, yeah.
Okay, have you read it?
No, he just spoke to us about it a few days ago though. No,
Yeah,
I haven't read it, man. He bought it for me, but
there you go.
The second person.
Well, there you go. It's a sign. So, in the book, he doesn't talk about the technique as much. In fact, he does very little. Actually, maybe not at all. He just references it. He doesn't talk about what you're actually doing, but he talks about his story to try to find God, and it is inspiring. It is beyond inspiring. But anyway, so in Kriya Yoga, from technically you get like actually certified, or not certified, but initiated into this tradition. I have, again, my doctor friend who's, as he told me, because he's initiated, he's authorized to share just little certain amount of it, but not so I don't have all the techniques actually personally yet, but I have sort of a starting foundation to work up to. And when the time is right, I plan to do an initiation into this technique of Kriya Yoga. But anyway, in this form of meditation, you're actually putting your energy and your attention, your focus on these energy centers or chakras. And the idea is to activate them consciously. So like, we can actually, the best example is if somebody starts having a fantasy, if they start fantasizing about, a sexual encounter or something, like you could be in one place, you're not touching yourself, you're not doing anything. And just with your mind, many people could cause themselves to like have an erection or like to become aroused just by thinking about something. Like think about that. You're literally channeling your life force energy, your consciousness, your awareness into some non-existent, unreal idea or potential reality, and your body will respond accordingly. So that's the only proof I need for anybody to understand that your mind controls your body effectively. And you can do the same thing thinking about a really good meal that you're excited to digest and almost start getting hungry and salivating. You can do the same thing by thinking about the person who you're angry at, who you're going to go tell off and you're mad at. And you could activate your first, center, your sexual center, system. You could activate the second center, your digestive system, the third center, your power center for, if you're going to be frustrated and angry and you're thinking about how you're going to go and, have an argument, or you're frustrated or reactive. So we can do that all with our mind, but we can also activate our heart with our mind. It's just something that people practice less because it's above the threshold of survival emotions. So the survival emotions, energy will, in a sense, if it's not tended to, will naturally flow to our, I don't want to say naturally flow to our survival emotions, but if we aren't conscious in this modern experience of the world, we will let our energy flow there. I wouldn't say naturally, because naturally, if you get over the survival, it actually naturally wants to go up. So, but we don't disconnect enough from our survival emotions in this life, because that's how we got here, like thousands of billion or millions of years of evolution or whatever. So, we've gotten here through the survival emotion. So anyway, this technique of meditation is about first disconnecting from everything and then letting your mind kind of be in that state of restfulness. You guys could even try it, and then just putting your attention on these, imagining like a little like golden spinning ball or something like this in each chakra, but starting in the one technique that I've learned, you actually would start at the top, work all the way down from your crown, above your crown chakra, so above your head, all the way down, and then bring it back up. In the Dr. Joe Dispenza meditations I've done, it's starting from the bottom and going up. I think there's value to both approaches. But so the reason I think this is the most valuable form of meditation that I've come across is because you're, as my yogi friend explained it to me, you're intentionally activating your lower animal centers so that they're under your control. So you're taking control of, like, you're not just going to like see somebody or have like sexual fantasy and let it like consume you, or like end up on the Instagram explore page and just be there for a long time. But then, which is a place I sometimes spend time, full disclosure, Anyway, sure. So then, second is like, you're not just like getting absolutely driven by like the need for food. Yes, it's going to drive you to some extent, but like you're in control of it. Same with like, for most people, the reactive emotion, like, which is our third energy center. Like, so activating those in meditation with your consciousness so that you're actually in control of them, and then working up and bringing that energy more to our heart, feeling what would it be like if I was actually, as the Dispenza work teaches, relax in your heart and awaken your brain, like actually carrying this energy in my heart. What would it be like? And again, this is really ancient stuff that's been, brought to modern ways and repackaged and repurposed in a variety of ways, thankfully, so people can understand it better in the modern world. But so anyway, energy on our heart, then you can focus your energy on your throat. Like, if I'm going to be talking on a podcast, I'll focus my energy on my throat chakra to beforehand, after, and I can actually feel a difference, like if I'm really aware of it. And then the next would be like our third eye, our pineal gland energy center, our third eye, related to consciousness, expanding consciousness, etc. And so one main effect of it, a few main effects, is like you're disconnecting from everything. So you're like getting over your environment, first of all, but then you're actually giving energy to the different energy centers or chakras. And so you're basically increasing their function and again, bringing them under your more conscious control, rather than being let's say, victim or just reactive like an animal, because animals don't have these higher levels of consciousness. That's what distinguishes humans from animals. And other people who are like, some animal lovers will be like, yeah, but animals have consciousness. Of course they do, just not the same level of consciousness.
Yeah,
we do. Just look at how dogs operate. Look at how cats might be a little above dogs, but like they're completely reacting to what's happening. They're operating completely in the lower centers. According again to the Hindu scriptures, they don't even really have a developed heart chakra. They might have the most basic capacity to connect and bond with their offspring, but that's about it. It doesn't get to the throat, the ability to communicate. They communicate, but not at as quite the high level as we do. And the pineal gland, not so much, et cetera, et cetera. So, all that's to say, we're again disconnecting from the environment. We're giving our attention and energy and bringing these chakras under our control and ultimately developing them. So my friend who's a yogi, he practiced this for years, and he says he can actually feel his chakras like very vibrantly, like with a lot of energy. And imagine if there's that much energy in each system. And Dr. Dispenza talks about also how these, based on the modern science, it's clear. People can go and research it. There's actually clusters of nerves that link to each of these previously known chakras that, for example, control our sexual energy centers, our digestive system, like the gut. The gut is now talked about, has so many nerve connections to the brain. It's considered a huge deal. So imagine if you're giving more and more energy through your consciousness to these centers, to these energy centers, then things in those regions should function better. Like your biology, your digestion, your sexual organs, your testosterone production, your, adrenal, adrenaline and cortisol production should all be much more balanced the way it's supposed to be when these systems have the energy they need to function. But then the final, for me, the main and ultimate benefit is, I actually think of this is the coolest part for me, is that this process is actually like evolution within a lifetime, within a day even. Because if you can lift your energy up, like billions of years of evolution, lifting our energy up in a sense caused us to be humans. We're upright, but not just that being upright matters, but we have more energy in these higher, let's say, divine-like centers that are more God-like. And I think that's kind of the result of all of these billions of years of evolution. That's where we are. So by doing this process, we're actually evolving like in a day by bringing our energy up more. And this is where I do believe these great masters, not to say that every great master practiced the same technique, because I'm sure there are other techniques that are equally as effective or maybe even more effective. but it seems like there's a lot of consistency. There's even a good amount of evidence that Jesus went to India and actually practiced, or at least to the Far East somewhere, and practiced certain techniques like this of self-realization. And it's about lifting this energy out of, again, our survival centers and up into our highest centers. And my understanding is that the person who has mastered this and can take all of their energy out of their survival centers, I mean, not all of it, because then, they wouldn't function, but not intentionally putting more and more of their focus and attention there, but lift their energy into their crown chakra, like, which is considered the connection to the divine, that this is like a kind of quality of enlightenment. When somebody's just, people talk about flow states a lot. Imagine if you were just always in flow state. I mean, that's, as far as I understand, that's what enlightenment kind of is. You get over the mundane. Anyway, so that's my deep dive on my interpretation and how I approach meditation.
Yeah, I think it's cool, like, when you talk about chakras, that like there's one side of the world had their own chakra, sort of, which is the same thing, whatever they called it, and then the other side of the world they found the same stuff, like in tribes explaining the chakras, but obviously those tribes had no connection to each other, like from South America to Asia and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, so that's when you look into it, you're like, oh wow, there's like, how does that happen? There's something to it. And like you said before, like when you're horny, you feel it somewhere. When you're hungry, you feel it somewhere. When you're choked up, there's all these. When you're grief, you feel it. You can touch it. You can always touch the area. One time I remember when I was feeling grief, I could touch the area, and then I ended up getting a chest infection there within like a couple of weeks. Because it was just like that area was just on for like days.
Yeah, I believe it completely.
Oh yeah, Dan Siegel, he says the mind is an embodied process of energy and information in the body. And when I was talking to Paul about it, and he's like, well, he goes, there's the chakras. That's what they are. He's like, the body holds the energy, and where does it go? It goes to the chakra that it is at, where the energy is stored. And I was like, that's amazing, because, like you said, you feel choked up, you want to cry, you feel it in here, or you might feel it in your solar plexus, and then it rises up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, it's been around for centuries.
I would add too. Yeah, it has. I would add that, because a lot of people will listen to this, and one thing I've learned from many great teachers, including Dr. Joe Dispenza, is that there's something to be said for not always trying to just speak to your critics. There's something to be said for actually speaking to the people who are going to understand what you have to say and are actually interested in what you have to say. Anyway, I think this is kind of a cliche concept, like don't focus on the haters, whatever, Yeah. That being said, I do feel a slight need to address people who might listen to this and say, oh, there's just a woo-woo spiritual podcast. I can't get down with this. I'm into science.
Yeah.
Science is such a farce. Just first of all, I have to be honest. Like, for people who think that science is what it is, it's not. It's like another industry that's just bought and sold to prove whoever's points that want to be proved. Unfortunately, the core ethos of science is phenomenal, and I love it. It's to know by experimentation. It's how I live my life. But the modern established science is more like a religion. I tweeted about this yesterday. It's more like a religion, because when something's established, you're not allowed to question certain things. There's just certain things that like you cannot question. And if you question them, you're like you're a conspiracy theorist, you're a flat earther, you're whatever the thing might be, And the thing is that it's like, okay, fine, cool, but that's not science. If you just write people off who decide that they want to question something. I'm not saying the earth is flat, just to be clear, but like the fact that just saying, like, the thing is that the scientific approach is to question everything. So if somebody questions something and says, yeah, well, we established, something, any concept at some point, and now we have, more information, but like, what if somebody wants to challenge one of the premises? That's actually a scientific approach. Now, if somebody's just constantly let's just say, baseless challenges of well-established, concepts, that's different. But in general, a lot of the time today, if you challenge like the theory of virology, and viruses, obviously is a very touchy subject with everything that's been going on in the world, people just get canceled even when they submit really good evidence or, you know how that goes. And it's like, science isn't what people think it is. Like the way most people operate today, this is the irony, is that they've replaced the religion with science, and it's still a religion. So people are looking for a religion, and they use science as their new religion, unfortunately. So anyway, that's an interesting, but that being said, there is actually science. Like, there is research that I have read and consider to be very solid and in the spirit of true scientific understanding, that I read, and I skipped through this as I went through my story, of course. But when I learned about the science of light, mitochondria, and so on and so forth, I read these books, one called The Body Electric and another is called Light in Shaping Life, Biophotons in Biology and Medicine. And basically, they both talk about how, and not just talk about, but show the studies, more importantly, of how our cells communicate using light and electricity, electromagnetic energy, and is very, very clear. In fact, it's not even disputed. It's not even like this is a fringe science thing. This is really well established. Our cells communicate using biophotons. Our cells generate biophotons. They generate light, and our nerves conduct electricity. Our bones regenerate using semiconduction, which was astounding when they discovered it, because it was something that was used in silicone chips and so on for computers. But then they discovered, we actually have this in us. Our bones actually use this type of electricity that's extremely rare in nature called semiconduction. Well, it's actually not that rare in living organisms, they proved, but it wasn't known to really exist in nature. Sure enough, it lives within us. So the science that underpins this is extremely solid. And I read all of this and I applied it. And again, this is the key thing. I thought it was all about things I was going to do externally outside of me. I thought it was all about dialing in my circadian rhythm and, optimizing my daily routine in that way, and getting more sunlight, taking more ice baths, all that different stuff. But then again, I felt like something was missing. I didn't feel whole even when I was doing all that stuff. And that's when I started to think, well, what if I looked at this science in a different way? Like, our consciousness is just energy. I know from the research that when we die, all the energy leaves our body, and that's the difference between a corpse and a living human. You wouldn't look at a corpse if somebody you knew and loved passed away. You wouldn't look at their body and say, "Oh, that's Sally." You would say, "That's Sally's body." But so then where'd Sally go? Well, she was the energy that's no longer present. Her soul, if you will, left her body. It's gone. The energy that makes up who she is gone. And this was actually measured in the research. When an organism dies, its cells leak this light for quite some time. And then once it's all leaked out, the body is cold and hard, and it's in what they call rigor mortis, which is when the body is like literally cold and rough. It's like once a cadaver, I haven't spent too much time dealing with cadavers, fortunately, in my life. Maybe some have. But once the body hits rigor mortis, I've been told and read, it is cold and rock hard. It just solidifies essentially. So that's when the light has leaked out entirely. All that to say, we are beings of light. Our consciousness is energy. Well, then maybe I can use my conscious awareness to direct this energy, which just through that simple thought experiment we've proven here. And I can use my consciousness to direct my awareness, energy, attention. It's kind of all the same. Your consciousness, awareness, attention, energy. They're synonyms as far as I'm concerned at the moment. And then I could actually change something inside of me. And again, Joe Dispenza, massive. I have so much gratitude for him, because he's actually read a lot of the books that I was reading on my own as well. And then he's already taken it to many levels ahead. Now I'm able to add in my own context and my own experience that it's stuff he doesn't speak about, the effects of light on the physiology and so on, that are also relevant for people to do, in my opinion, in the process of lifting their consciousness. Because for me, it helped to start building a relationship with the sun somehow. Not exactly sure how, to be honest, but connecting with nature, getting, on the earth, barefoot, grounding, getting in the ocean, getting in the sea, taking ice baths, going for hikes, getting out and getting sun in particular, somehow lifted, I think, my consciousness, my awareness, my perception to be more in a state where I could then tune in and understand and be open to this other information. I would guess it has to do partially with the sun activating the pineal gland, this kind of greater awareness, this greater sense of consciousness. Like I don't want to brag at all, but like people tell me a lot. They're like, dude, you have really, like, just a random dude I met on the street the other day in Corfu, who I asked to take a picture of me, and then we started chatting. Turns out he lived there. He's like, you have really good manners. Like, they're just going to take you really far in life. And I'm like, I'm not trying to have good manners. It's just like, I think when you do certain things, both these like healthy lifestyle practices, in particular with the sun, but also obviously the meditation stuff, like you might, and I'm not perfect, not even close, but like, you get to a place where like you just want to be nice, or you want to be friendly and kind, because like you feel good and you feel like that's just the right thing to do. And it just comes out naturally when you have more energy. And again, the sun, I believe, is a way to take a lot of this energy in. And I believe that the more people who start practicing the light diet, so like, full transparency for me, the light diet's a Trojan horse, just telling everybody now so they're prepared for the attack. I'm giving up the battle plans in advance. The light diet is the Trojan horse, where it comes in and everybody thinks it's about health and about biohacking and about optimizing your health with light. I mean, the secret's already out, but, biohacking, optimizing your health with light, and And it actually is. But what you don't know is that the soldiers inside are the spiritual warriors, that once you've started to open your consciousness and connect with nature more, you might be interested in what's next. Now, so if somebody's not interested in that's what's next, then you'd better just sequester yourself in a dark room and stare at blue light LEDs all day long. And then you'll be miserable and you won't have to worry about elevating your consciousness. But I don't recommend anybody do that, to be clear. But if they're particularly interested in avoiding expanding their mind and their consciousness. So, yeah.
Amazing. I love it, dude. I love it. Yeah. You get your energy just comes through.
Don't know where that was going, but
but yeah, it's your soul speaking, right? It's like, it doesn't need to have an end.
Not mine.
Yeah. And I think that's
exactly.
why. It's sort of, you remind me of myself a little bit. Like, usually I'm just sitting here quiet, but like, your brain runs fast. And I couldn't imagine what it would be like without meditation. It runs even faster. And the fact that you got high energy and healthy, that I think the world responds to that, and people respond to that, and everyone responds to someone that looks healthy, and they almost want to be around them. And because you got high energy, so someone that's unhealthy doesn't have high energy.
Yeah, it made a lot of sense what you're talking about there, man. With the like spot on.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
It's thankfully I'm blessed, because this is, again, from a lot of teachers much wiser than me, like particularly Jesus, Yogananda, and Joe Dispenza. And it's funny, I'll put Joe Dispenza in this category. I don't know I hope if somebody or he knows is going to listen to this and be like, yeah. But like, I really do. Like, I see this category of like a great master in disguised in the body of a American dude who's just as kind of a scientist and a scientific mind, which he is. So anyway, I'm super fortunate and super grateful to have these different teachers. But, when you look at, so for example, about the soul, I think it's such a great point. This is what the great masters write, the soul is like the drop of water of the sea. Like it has all of the information of the sea in it, but it's also like its own unique part of the sea. Joe Dispenza has used the term, it's part of the whole and wholeness in parts. So it's like you can take wholeness and break it into parts and it's still wholeness. And so, but this is what's kind of counterintuitive for people to understand, that something that's a part of the whole could actually be the wholeness broken into parts. It could have all the qualities of the whole inside of itself. It's not necessarily the whole in and of itself, but it has all of the information and qualities of the whole in parts. If that makes sense. Yeah. And so I hope it makes sense. But basically, so like this is there's two examples I could help people with this, or first one kind of explanation of this is that, so our soul, which you guys are talking about, the idea is that our soul is wholeness in parts. So it is the unlimited infinite intelligence of the universe in parts. And so again, speaking about this from the perspective of like light and energy, like the light, the energy, the electromagnetic field, I don't still fully understand exactly all how it works. Unfortunately, there's not enough scientific research being done on this subject yet, although there is a company now studying, or an organization that we just announced a partnership with called Inner Science Research Fund, which is actually studying particularly Joe Dispenza's community for the scientific effects of meditation. And, the goal is to make meditation, because they've seen it heal so many illnesses. So it's to make meditation part of the standard of care in medicine, based on science. And it's amazing. So anyway, it is starting to be studied, but it needs to be studied more. All that's to say, so there's this energy field that is who we are. It's a field of energy and information. It's light, it's electromagnetic, it's energy based, and it directs everything in our body. And the chakras are a part of this field. So I studied this field. So the chakras and energy centers made sense to me that, okay, if only they studied a little bit further, they'd probably find, this. And I even, a frequency doctor, he's a frequency light therapy doctor who's now my chief scientific officer at my company, actually. Thanks God. And when I first met him, he took a tuning fork and put the tuning fork in front of me and his hand behind. And I could actually feel when he put the tuning fork over the chakra, because it creates a different kind of resistance of the frequency of the energy, the vibration, the sound vibration, than when you aren't over a chakra. He did this like tuning fork, bing, and then put his hands, and I was standing, and like I could feel when he put the tuning fork over me, he could find where the chakras are centered. So anyway, super interesting stuff. But so the soul is like an individuated piece of this whole of consciousness. And when I say soul, I'm referring to the electromagnetic energy that scientifically is who we are, that leaves our body when we die, that governs how our body functions, that tells, I didn't want to get into this much. Well, we could get into more detail, but long story short, Western science doesn't have an explanation for how different cells know to become what they become. The toes, the nose, the ears, the eyes, the genitals, the kidney, the liver, they all have the same 23 genes, same exact 23 I should say 23 chromosomes, same genes. How does this become that, and that becomes that, and how does it know to go where it is? Well, no Western biology has any explanation for that at all, that's at all sound or solid. But Dr. Robert O. Becker, who wrote The Body Electric, the book I referenced earlier, studied it, found its electricity, found that there's electrical impulses and energy direct cells to go from like a stem cell, like a blastocyst, dedifferentiated, to specific types of cells. And that depends on where the cell finds itself in the energy field, where where it's needed. Like if you take stem cells in, they're going to go where they need to go. And then based on where they end up, they're going to become what they need to become in that place. And that's all directed by energy. So just so people don't think that this is some woo-woo pseudoscientific concept. So that energy field that is who we are, we can call it the soul. It's been called the soul for a long time, is the same energy, the light electromagnetic energy that makes up and governs and organizes the entire universe, which some people would call God. Others would call it the quantum field. I would probably call it God, but I call it the force behind all forces would be another way to put it. And so we have that in us. And so the idea, again, that I've gathered from the more ancient scriptures, the Hindu scriptures, and as well as the Bible, is that our soul, because it is that same energy, it knows everything that energy knows. So it's like, and that's why these spiritual teachers say you have it all within you, like your soul already knows everything. So when I talk about people like transcending the illusion or working on elevating our consciousness, it's literally about us overcoming this so-called illusion or ego that it's, as it's called, so that we can be driven completely by this soul, this, infinite flow of energy, which is a wholeness in parts of the greater energy source, and that it can drive everything that we're doing in our lives. And I do think that that's what the concept of enlightenment is. A friend of mine, this yogi doctor, his name is Balarama. He told me that he asked me one time, like, do you know why when you read something that's true, it feels so true and so good? And I was like, no, I don't. It's because your soul already knows everything. Yeah. Your soul already knows what you're reading. It's just reminding it of something it already knows. And that made so much sense to me. It explained it way better than everything. And you feel it's just, I know that's true. Yeah. Because again, the soul knows everything. How could it be that I read some piece of information and it resonates at such a deep level? It's like, is this new? Or is it that like some part of me knows that information is true and it's resonance? It's reminding me something that I already knew, that the soul already knew, the conscious mind forgot, because that's the human experience, I guess, is to forget and then remember.
Fuck, man,
that's great, dude. I had so I started looking at Joe Dispenza's work like a pretty long time ago because I wanted to work on my jealousy. I had jealousy, I don't know, it was probably 10 years ago now. And I remember I was working with this girl who loves Joe Dispenza, and she was like, you just need to, tap into that. We're doing all the space meditations, man. I was doing them in the morning, and literally, whenever jealousy comes up for me now, I just see it so clearly. Like I'm just like, oh, there it is. So it's kind of like I filed it away. You know what I mean? It allowed me to get back behind my thoughts and behind everything and see it pop up separate of me, which is so cool. And it's actually inspired me. I really want to do more of his meditations. They're really good.
Same. And the reminder, remember how when we got on the plane back from Bali, this is before, I used to be a scaffolder, right? So I used to be fully on the tools. But I wanted to be a check practitioner, and I was studying, I was learning heaps, I was fully into it, but I was like, never thought I could know enough. I was like, I'm not ready, not ready yet. Then he was in Bali and was like, oh, just do it, dude. Just do it. And then on the plane landing in Brisbane, I was listening to the first Joe Dispenza meditation I listened to was the space one. And I got to a state, probably the first time ever actually at any meditation, because I was pretty new to it. I got to a state where I was doing check as a job, like doing my job, working with clients, and like it was done. Like it didn't last long. It lasted, you could put a timer on it, probably 10, 15 seconds of like bliss, but it was already done. And then a month later, probably less actually, but probably 2 weeks later, I was doing it. And then 3 weeks later, I quit my other job, started doing it full time. And then it grew into this. And then now we sort of just,
we're professional manifestors.
Yeah, we're exactly. Yeah. And then we were talking about recently, we're like, oh, we want a gym, and we want an ice bath sauna place. And like, we have a gym here, but it's our own gym. I want a gym for the people, so we can teach our way of movement and philosophies to a gym here where people all ideally shop at the farmer's market and change the world with their dollar, right? But in a gym franchise style aspect. And then I sat down with dinner with this dude the other day. He's like, yeah, I just bought this place. I want you guys to smack a big gym right in the middle, ice bath sauna. And I was just thinking, like, I knew that was going to come. And I knew we didn't have to do nothing. It just came
bro.
It just came to us. It's like ridiculous now.
It's so
ridiculous.
Great. Yeah. That's how it is. No, but that's literally how it is. Like I have stuff like that happen, and Dr. Joe talks about it a lot. Like I have stuff happen, and I didn't believe it in the beginning. I was like, nah, like that's just not. But it does start to get amazing, and part of me really wonders whether I really have actually come to just believe that all of this stuff, it's already around us. Like, it's all those opportunities have already been there. It's just about tuning into the frequency. A lot of people talk about manifesting, like creating something out of nothing. Like, I think those people who have those opportunities, they're walking by you every single day. It's just most people are like this. They're not looking at the opportunities. And I think it's just about like us waking up to those opportunities that are always around us, whether it's for happiness, joy, a relationship, a partner, a business. Even for me, like I have challenges I face every single day in my business that are, I understand now from the perspective of inner light consciousness that, they're not really challenges in my business. They're challenges in my mind, emotions I'm not willing to face or I'm avoiding. That's always how it is. It's just like, I'm saying, oh, I have all these challenges or this or that. It's like, no, it's just emotions and things that you're just not willing to face yet. Or, things you're I'm, for example, maybe, there's a whole new level of like self realization and development that's like ready and waiting for me to kind of step up. And that's always how it is. And I'm just like, maybe like shy of, am I really like worthy of like being at that high, at like that level of, things just effortlessly flowing and having a team who just works for me and makes things happen and gets shit done. And I really can just kind of sit back and kind of oversee it all. Like, for example, I don't know if that's exactly the case, but sometimes it's like overcoming these limited emotions, but it always, again, based on my experience and just study and seeing it, I think fairly clearly, it's like, it's always worth it when we make that effort, because we are going to get the benefit of overcoming that emotion and overcoming ourselves and growing. So I think it's really beautiful. Like, I had an experience, for me, the travel is a great test, because it's like, I look at my life and in kind of following of my earlier point about the travel and kind of the way I'm looking at things and what I'm doing, and how I sat down just the other day or just yesterday evening actually, and was thinking like, I'm already living my dream. Why would I let anybody talk me out of that? Like, why? And speaking of jealousy, like, I've looked at other companies in the same space who, they're launching all these other products way faster than I have. And I'm like, but do I really care to do that? Like, first of all, I don't want to compete with cheap low quality, like every product under the sun that, you know, other companies are doing. And yeah, that's just not my goal to create things really quickly. We want to create the highest quality products possible. So not to say that other people's products are cheap, but there are some companies that do offer cheap products, others that offer high quality products. But my goals are just different, you know, not to do everything under the sun, but to do the few things that we do and do them extremely well. And then, you know, so I had a lot of jealousy for certain companies in my sort of sector for a while as well, like tremendous, like it tore me apart constantly. I couldn't even bear to hear their name. I was like, oh my gosh. But again, I realized that was just me coming from a perspective of like limited consciousness, like that there's not enough to go around, that only like that it's either or them or me. And that's just another lie, another lie. It's just not true. Right. But so anyway, and part of this is like, as we raise this consciousness, like you said, you step behind it, like you're at a higher level of energy. You're no longer attached to that emotion, which is keeping us obviously linked to this false belief that goes along with that emotion. And we have to overcome the emotion first. Of course. And so anyway, I've been enjoying the travel, using it as a tool to kind of test myself. And I remember one day in the shower, this is like 2 years ago now, I remember feeling like, God, this is so difficult, like really hard what I'm experiencing for me. And I just, again, one of the best thoughts I think that's ever crossed my mind, it was like, what if this is just preparing me for something that's like much, much more, you know, challenging, let's say. And then I thought like, you know, what would Jeff Bezos do if he was in my shoes? Like the guy's running one of the largest companies in the world, started it as a book selling shop online, and now it's like one of the largest companies in the world. You know, what would he do? How would he look at my problems in my much, much, much smaller business? He'd probably be like, do this, do that, do this, hire this person, do that, move on. Like he could probably he would, you know, somebody of that level of consciousness in the business standpoint would probably look at my business and challenges and everything, our profit and loss, and resolve every problem that I could spend the next year working on in an hour or less. Like just, this is what you need to focus on. This is what you need to do. This is what you need to put in place. And I'm like, that's just a different level of consciousness, again, in a business example. But I thought, what if this is just preparing me? Like he had to go through, obviously, God knows how much challenge to get to where he is. I mean, I can only imagine like the kind of person he's had to become to run what he's running. I mean, people look at like, oh, this greedy capitalist. It's like people have no idea the kind that guy's employing so many people, creating so much business. I admire people like that because I know how hard it is, even at a smaller scale. But so anyway, that's one thought is about, you know, business and lifting consciousness. But so then I'm looking at, just the other day, I started looking at what I'm doing now traveling, and I'm like, you know, it would make sense that if I if my business scales, and I feel like inevitably it will, because light and frequency is the future of medicine. And we are the only company, as far as I'm concerned, that's really leading this charge. I mean, we started with blue light protection glasses. There are many companies creating light therapy panels we don't have ours ready yet, but I'm so confident that the way we're doing things is going to really rock the boat in a way. And the light bulbs we're working on and future technologies and stuff, and the experts we work with, all that's to say, like, if everything goes the way I'd like it to, or I see that it could, it's like, I'm probably going to, not out of choice, but out of necessity, be constantly traveling and constantly having to get shit done. So it's like right now I'm almost voluntarily putting myself into the fire, which I enjoy, in a way of like, okay, how can I manage doing this and still have some semblance of balance in my life? And then just one more thing, you know, to your point about this amazing opportunity that just came. Like, I was about to leave for Europe. The way I ended up in Albania. So this is, I guess I said earlier I would share the story, and so now here it is. But I love Europe. I've always loved Europe ever since I was hadn't even ever been to Europe. I love the concept of it, Paris and Rome, and the architecture and the sculptures and the museums and the history. And then I studied abroad in Eastern Europe, in Bosnia, when I was 16 years old, on a high school exchange program through the U.S. government that a teacher told me about. And I was like, that sounds dope. Signed up. And then there was all these countries, mostly like Muslim countries in Africa, India, some in the Middle East that were like deemed safe for American exchange students. And then like these two countries in Europe, Bosnia and Macedonia. And I was like, well, the European countries sound like the coolest experience for me. So I got into this one to Bosnia, and I loved the culture, like how people my age, like, were very social. They were out in town talking, like having coffee. Just, you know, where I grew up in the suburbs, like people would only really hang out at people's houses. It was less common to like go out for like a lunch and be like social in the European sense. Again, in high school at the time, people do that more as we grew up, of course. But anyway, I just fell in love with the European lifestyle, and the Mediterranean Sea is just so beautiful, cultural. There's so much history. I love the history of Rome and Greece and all this. And it kind of aligns really well with the light diet, because these people practiced, they worship the sun god, they practice sunbathing. So anyway, I had a conference and a speaking gig at a conference called the Biohacker Summit in Amsterdam a few weeks ago, October 13th or something like that. And my team was coming over so we could all exhibit together and connect in person, because some of the team hadn't met because we're pretty much remote. Then we had a meeting with our scientific advisor just beforehand in Germany. So we had like this great team trip. But so I knew I wanted to get over to Europe like at least a week before, because I was in the States just kind of tying up some loose ends, getting some things done, and focusing for a little while, visiting my mother. And I was like, I want to go to Europe. I just don't know where. And I was like, I just have to. It was a test. It was like an experiment. My old self always tried to plan trips weeks in advance. So when it came to it, I was like, maybe not as excited about it. The most excited I am is like when I can wake up in the morning of the most up-to-date information about how I'm feeling and be like, I want to go here today. Like that's the most, for me, the most fun. And that's what I'm actually doing today. I'm going to get on a boat in a few hours and take the boat to Florida. But so all that to say, I made it. I even visited my father in Philadelphia. So I was in San Diego. I flew to Philly, halfway to Europe, across the US continent. So, California is like a 10-hour, 11-hour flight. But Philadelphia, New York, right next to each other, are only like 6 hours over to Europe across the Atlantic. So anyway, I'm like visiting my father, and it's funny. It was like a Monday morning. And I'm like, okay, I renewed my driver's license, because that's one of the things I had to do in Pennsylvania, because that's where I'm technically a resident of still, although I don't really live anywhere. So I renewed my driver's license. I got that done. I'm like, all right, box check. I can leave. And I was like meditating all morning, like, where am I going to go today, assuming I can get my driver's license done? So it was like the day just for me, it's really fun and funny. For other people, they might just think I'm nuts. But I was like, I know I'm going to Europe today. I just don't know where. And all the flights leave in the afternoon. So I know I have all day to figure this out. But so in my meditation that morning, I was thinking, I want to go somewhere on the, we talk about like frequencies and energy, right? I just knew in my heart, like my soul, let's say, I already knew, like, I knew I wanted to be somewhere on the Mediterranean Sea, specifically like the Eastern Mediterranean, like the Adriatic Sea, like Greece, but I didn't feel Greece at all, because it's a bit more touristy than I prefer. Montenegro or Croatia, I was thinking, because I like Croatia. The Adriatic Sea is super flat and calm. It's great for swimming. It's just great. The water would be getting a little colder. The sun hits perfectly in October on the Mediterranean. It's like heaven. But then I was like, but Croatia is like really expensive. I mean, I could make it work, but it's like, I just don't feel good about spending more money than I need to when there's like much more value available, let's say. And I've already been like 5 times to Croatia. So I'm like, something new. I'm like, well, what about Albania? Like but I had this mindset, which is totally false, that like Albania is dangerous and all this stuff, because it was like 30 years ago. And there was like more of a drug trafficking, scene here than other places in Europe. And it's not part of the European Union. But anyway, I just challenged that belief. I was like, why not look into it? And Dua Lipa, the famous singer, I was like, well, she's from Albania. It can't be that bad, and I like her music. So anyway, I just started thinking about it, and I was like, what about Albania? And I started just Googled up at this, like, again, just think about it. The story conveys the frequency thing we've been talking about this whole time. I just chose to like lift my frequency just a tiny bit out of like what's known and familiar. Oh, Croatia. Oh, I've been there a bunch of times. Oh, Montenegro. I've heard a lot about it. Oh, Greece. It's really popular. Albania. Nobody talks about it, right? No Americans that I've I've never even heard an American utter the word Albania in my life that I can remember.
Just movies, man. Taken.
What's that?
Just movies from like Taken. The Albanians came and take his daughter.
There you go. Exactly. Someone told me to watch Taken. I haven't seen Taken. A friend of mine
bro,
told me to watch it. But
it's
sick, right? Yeah. So there's the reputation. So I'm like, I just lift my consciousness and my frequency. I was meditating, like, I'm not getting up until I get clarity on this, because it's Monday and I'm not going to make a stressed out decision later in the day. I'm going to make a decision right now. And it's funny, I was looking at flights. I mean, same day flights. Like, I'm talking leaving that afternoon from Philadelphia or from Newark Airport, which is New York City. It's like an hour and a half train from Philly. Super easy. I was looking at flights, and it was like to Dubrovnik, Croatia, which is where I thought I would go. It was like $1,400 or $1,500 one way, which day of to Europe with a connection, it's not like insane, but it's pretty expensive for a flight in general. And then I was like, okay, like this doesn't feel right. That's the thing. I learned in the story illustrates how I was learning to listen to my heart and these internal signals that I ignored for the longest time. And maybe I hope somebody finds something of value here. So I was like kind of feeling at this point, it doesn't feel right. And I wasn't ignoring it actually in this story. I was like, I'm not going to make a decision until it feels good. And so then I'm like, what about Albania? And I Googled it. I saw these amazing pictures of these beautiful beaches. I was like, what? That looks unbelievable. Like I want to go there. And so then I look at the flights and I was like, I was praying to I have an altar with these spiritual masters. I'm like, masters, like, please help me figure this out ASAP. Like I need to make a decision or just decide I'm not going to travel today, maybe tomorrow. But then I only had 6 days at that point before my team meeting. I'm like, I got to just go quickly and get there and I'll have less than a week. So I need to move. Anyway, so then I look at the flights, same flight, same connecting airport in Frankfurt or Vienna, but it was like $400 or $450 instead of $40. I'm like, same flight, no long connections, one stop from Newark to Albania to Tirana. So obviously they're just jacking up the prices to Croatia and Dubrovnik because it's a tourist spot. But I'm like, that's insane. I ended up taking a slightly different flight. It was like $500, but still like a third of the price of what I was looking at for Croatia, and like was pretty much ready to book for about 2 weeks, but I just didn't because I didn't feel right. And I just waited. And somehow like the story actually for me shows the key point well, because if you can just get really good at being patient, and as Dr. Joe says, like surrendering to the unknown and be okay with the unknown. I was like, the unknown's way more exciting. I've realized like, I don't like having 6 weeks of travel booked out. I like having 0 days of travel booked out, or like a week at a time. Actually, I'm operating with like a week, and then it comes to the end and I'm like, what am I going to do tomorrow? Or what am I going to do that new day? So anyway, I looked at Tirana. I was like, all right, I'm going. And then got in, booked the hotel, stayed there, had the best time. And it just opened up this whole world of like cool experiences, meeting some cool people, experiencing a place I never would have imagined would be so cool and interesting. It's super cheap and affordable, especially compared to the rest of Europe. And it's like all that came from just like not being willing to compromise on like this higher level energy of like, I know it's possible to find an outcome that's going, speaking of the gym, that's going to be like way better than I could have imagined and easier. I know that's possible. I just have to be patient for it. And it came. And it just proved to me that it works. So anyway,
man,
hopefully people can make something practical shared.
Yeah. That's motivating. And it's inspiring. And I can just really see that you're being led by your heart, and that's sort of what we talk like.
That's what we
I've
preach.
said it, preach it like it changed my life hearing Paul on a podcast. This is what made me do it, right? This one sentence on a podcast. I was driving in the desert working in the mines at the time, right? And and what do you say? It was look with your eyes and ears, but let your heart be your compass. And that was it.
Yeah.
That summates it, right? And we really use that for everything we do now. Like every decision, every person wants to work with us, any collaborations, all that sort of stuff is like, that's what guides us. Whatever feels good. If it feels good, let's do it. And I feel excited about it, let's do it. But if it doesn't feel good, I'm like, nah. It's like there's enough on the plate,
How good's that?
Yeah, you guys, it's such a good point. I could apply this even more, like, because so many people, for example, asked me to come on podcasts, and like when I looked at this podcast with you guys, I was like, "There's no question." I was like, "This looks dope. These guys it looks awesome." Like I'm stoked. Yeah. But then, like, to be honest, not that the people aren't great people or something with a good intention, but I'm like, my heart a lot of the time immediately says like no. But a lot of the time I do them anyway. Yeah. For example, and I'm like, I don't need to do that. Like that's just keeping me again anchored to like the past or and living in a reality that isn't what I want to be living in. So anyway, this is
so true. That's so true,
guys.
Yeah, because we get asked to go up on some podcasts too, and it's like that. Your brain goes, yeah, you meant to do it because it's marketing, and you never know. This opens up this and this. But like sometimes you just don't want to.
You don't feel good. Hey, like it's not a whole body. Yes.
Yeah. You just can't you just don't want to sit down for 2 hours and chat. Like it's cool.
Yeah, but man, it'd be sick to have you out to Australia one time. Like whenever you come out, man, we got you.
Yeah, we got you here, sunny coast.
I'll be there, bro. I'll be there. I'm planning to come to Bali probably in I don't know, sometime when the waves get good. Like last year I went in December and it was like rainy and windy for 2 months until like the last week that I was there, and it started getting really good. And then I went to Australia for this Joe Dispenza thing. So I'd probably wait this year until like February or March, and I want to stay in Europe through the winter anyhow. But I would love to come visit after. I would love to come visit when I'm close in Bali. It's so close,
Yeah, everyone goes to Bali. Like, and Yeah, I was actually looking at Bali in March because we're going to Japan in February. We're going to snowboard Hakuba.
Yeah, and then I want to go to
Yeah.
Texas.
All right, I might join you. I'll keep you posted.
Yeah,
dude.
sick.
Cruising there, that'd be sick.
Best spot, eh?
Because I fell in love with snowboarding now. Like I was like, I couldn't believe how fun it is. It's like it's surfing a mountain.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's crazy,
dude. The mountain. Mountain
I'll
energy.
be in. That was my idea for this winter, was to like hop between different Swiss and Austrian Alp resort towns.
Yeah,
Like
right.
I was like, because I can. Why not? If I can just spend a week in this resort town and ski half the day and work half the day, it's like, because again, if I'm just in one place where I don't have something to fill my time with, I just fill it with too much work. And it's not net good for the business. It's usually net bad because I end up stressed. And it's like, if you're working, I would say I work pretty hard. I'd say there are definitely people who like do manual labor jobs who work a lot harder than me, including I used to do like landscaping. So I know what good manual labor feels like. So I'm not saying I work harder than anybody else out there, but like I put in a tremendous amount of energy on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Like it's not like 5 p.m. Okay, I'm out. I'm going to go have a coffee and chill. It's like until the moment I go to sleep, it's in my head. You know, I'm thinking about the mission. Just like for someone who's putting in as much energy and attention and effort from my entire adult life, from the moment I graduated high school, even actually the 3-4 years before all of high school, was on this quest. The business hadn't been created yet, but it was this quest to figure this out. So like I try to give myself some slack as well. Like, 12 years into this kind of journey, let's say, about 12 years of like full on searching, 11 or so. Like if I'm going to continue working as hard as I do and putting as much energy really as I do into this, it's like, there's got to be a reward in a sense, like a payoff for me that I can experience. At least this is how I feel. And part of that is just the fact that we're helping people and that it's benefiting people and so on. But like in my life, if I can't go do some of these really cool things, it's like, what is
it all for?
Also a question, like, what am I doing it all for? At the end of the day, like, yeah, you can work to help other people, but if you're not like truly happy yourself and living your dream, then, what are you really doing it for? If your dream is just to help people, like to be Mother Teresa, then by all means, like, do it, But if your dream includes, they say in the Hindu scriptures that you can only exit the cycle of birth and rebirth once you've accomplished all of your human desires. In other words, like if you still have a desire that like you need to do this or that, not to say that you should do things that are like low energy, like we have to use our discernment, but as long as we genuinely hold a desire in our heart that like we want to experience, we either have to let that go or experience it. And that's how we can get to like this, let's say, exiting of this cycle of like delusion of birth, like reincarnation, which I'm skeptical about, but it kind of makes sense according to that philosophy. I like the idea, at least in what it offers. And so all that's to say, like, there's a part of me that, my dream in this lifetime as a kid, and obviously was like travel the world, experience it, like, and do it. And so, for somebody who has that dream, to sell yourself short, which I did for a few years. And I thought like, oh yeah, I'm just going to grind really hard now. And then I'll start living the way I want to live. And then I learned that happiness is like a muscle. This was the best analogy I've ever heard about happiness. You don't use it, it atrophies. You lose it. That's it. So it's not like you can save up your happiness. It's not like a bank account where I'm going to not be happy now and save it up for future. You're going to get to that future and the bank account's going to be empty because happiness is only in the present moment. So you can't save it for the future. You can't like say, oh, I'm going to make myself miserable and grind now and be happy. So then anytime any naysayer is like, well, you should be doing this or that, I'm like, I'm stoked and I'm just going to and then the cool thing too is that I'm going to make my business more stoked because like I'm putting stoked energy into my company, which is way better than me being bored and depressed energy, to be honest.
Yeah.
Amen,
oh man.
brother.
And if you're a part of the brand, the brand isn't just raw, like it's you're attached to it, and that's rare. Not a lot of brands are that. So they have to do all this other shit, because there's no face to it. But when there's a face attached to it, that becomes part of it. And there's an energy attached to your energy that then attaches to the brand. And that's the way it is, really. And I think what you said, like what Paul says is play in the garden, but play healthy. And that's it. Like you can still treat people well, live a crazy life, make money, experience, you know what I mean? And you don't have to be the guy on the hill meditating for 10 hours, You can have it all. You can have it all.
Yeah, whatever that looks,
whatever. I couldn't agree more, guys.
Live your life on your terms. But thanks for coming on today, man. We really appreciate your time.
Awesome
and,
chat.
Dude, it was so sick to have you on. Like, this is you were the one, like, when we started the podcast, Actually, a year after I started, I was like, we've got to get this guy on. But I was like, we're not quite big enough yet. But yeah, well, now we are.
No, you guys, I'm glad you waited too, because like sometimes if it's really, really small, we have to say no just because I get too many requests now of these. But it's amazing. I'm so glad. I would say this is by far, it's funny. I say this a lot of the time when I go on a new podcast, and it's a good thing, but this is definitely the best podcast I've ever done. Like as far as how I'm so happy, I swear. Like it takes, in my opinion, it takes like the interviewers. Like it's not really about me. It is a certain amount, but like about you guys being like so open to these ideas and sort of in resonance and in alignment.
Yeah, definitely.
Like and actually, having this desire, because then I can put out like my best work. I'm stoked. Yeah. This is just really exciting. I look forward to this coming out. And then the one thing I would just shout out. I would shout out my company, Raw Optics, because I'm more interested in talking about all the stuff we spoke about. I appreciate it. I'm more interested. I'm more interested now in about.
Dude, the slickest blue light blockers.
Go ahead.
I've had
two
two pairs.
Years.
I've had two pairs. My dog chewed up two pairs.
All right,
I've got another pair.
Last one. We both got Hungarian Visslers.
We got Visslers, and they. But man,
mine lasted. They were still brand new, and I got them fucking. I first got them on a Ben Greenfield podcast. You did. I don't even think you're on the podcast back then. Maybe I think he just had like an affiliate link or something and spoke about it. This would have been
ages ago.
Early days, man. This would have been right when you started. Right when Ben was just popping up, and that's started getting us into health, and then we got Nepal.
You got me into the blue light blockers.
Yeah,
you were like, this guy's got these blue light blockers. And then I got a pair, and we were loving it because we were gaming at night and shit, living together. It was sick, dude.
And man, fuck, they work for people that actually listening, because I talk about, like, I try everything I've given to people. I've tried it a million times over, and blue light blockers, it is so noticeable. Like if you're sitting there watching a movie with them on, you basically can fall asleep. But for me, like, I'm not going to fall asleep watching a movie unless I have them on. And I like that because then I'm tired, I can get up and go to bed. So and then when you take them off, it's like any light. It feels like you're looking into the sun.
Yeah, it's just
it's
undoable.
And you think, if you look back into evolution, and we talk about that for the whole cortisol and melatonin thing, was that when we were a single cell organism, that was completely dependent upon the light dark cycle of that communication of melatonin and cortisol. When the sun goes up, cortisol goes up, sun goes down, melatonin goes up. And that's so primordial from when we're like a cell.
So deep in our DNA.
When we're a cell, so that's the full rhythm of the hormones then, and people forget that we have other factors that can affect our hormones, but that's the standard, so that's number one, I believe. And every female client I've ever had with any sort of fertility issues or any sort of just hormone stuff, I just break that conceptual truth down to them in a way that makes sense. Like, we got to get your light and dark sorted while you do all the other right shit, you know what I mean? So just for people listening, get some.
Get some. And
Thank you guys.
rawoptics.com.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. And you guys should probably have, if you don't already have it set up, we'll set up a discount code like Corrective Culture so people can use your discount code.
Yeah, let's do that. Dude, let's do that.
Keen as, and we've got a link up.
Just anybody who's listening now,
Corrective Culture. Yeah.
Corrective Culture would be the code. And I would just add one more thing on the glasses, which is that the way that I look at them is that it's like a stepping stone, like a way to help people bridge the gap when they're in this lifestyle, this environment that's like really, truly disconnecting us from that basic rhythm. You can use these glasses to help reset that basic rhythm. And ultimately, the way that I look at it, that it connects it to our consciousness is when you start to improve your health by improving your sleep, by using the glasses at night to block blue light, but then also to get the sunrise in the morning, you start to improve that circadian rhythm. You improve the function of your hormones, your neurotransmitters, your entire metabolism, all your mitochondria start to work better. And so then again, you're feeling better and you're able to kind of step out of survival and into looking at like, okay, how can I go to the next level now? And so for me, it was, and still is a foundational. I wear them every single day. I'm exposed to totally natural light now out on the balcony. So I wouldn't be wearing my yellow lenses for protecting from screens. But if I was doing this interview indoors under artificial lights, I would be wearing my yellow lenses during the day to protect my eyes from screens. So thank you guys also. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on the show, and
awesome,
forward to our next conversation, hopefully in person, up in a lodge in Japan or down by the beach.
I'll shoot you a message when we know exactly what we're doing.
Yeah, and then see if your heart feels right at the time, and you might just have to spontaneously book.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, bro. Much love.
Amen. Yeah, I like Zurich to Tokyo, fly from snowboarding one day in Switzerland and the next day in Japan, dude.
Yeah,
that would be
fucking oath.
That's
a legend.
sick. Let's do it, bro.
All right, bro.
Hell yeah,
Much
brother.
love.
the best. Thanks so much.
Much love, brother.
Take care.